Hey guys, welcome to Coreskills. I'm Spencer from sketchday.com and I'm producing these videos as a means of going a little bit more in depth into my process of how to draw, how to sketch, and how I see the world around me. Creation's an interesting thing. As designers, really we are communicating, listening to our clients, representing those ideas on paper and models or whatever means we have, but also we bring order to chaos. You've probably heard the saying less is more, and other design mantras out there, but really it's kind of become apparent to me over the years that we bring order to things. When you look at a product, be it a toolbox like this one here, or it could be my little ink bottle for my marker or a pencil or anything really that humans have created, it's a logical thing. It may start with a primitive. Okay, so I could describe my toolbox as being a cube that was deformed or squished and transformed to be a little bit wider. And then some other operations take place, and then we add things like textures. So what I'd like to talk about today is a three-step process to kind of reducing some of the stress and complexity when it comes to drawing objects, whether it be for your job or for fun or whatever. And you can do this as you're observing things and drawing them, or as you're just drawing things from your imagination. And it's a three-step process called form, divide, and beautify. So let's get right to it. Okay, so to start this process, or kick it off rather, let's take a look at just a simple object here. And this is my toolbox. So I've got this little toolbox. I use it to put my markers in. It's a Sustainer by Thanos. Really, if I think in terms of primitives, how this probably started was a cube. So I could think of it as a cube that was squished, okay, vertically, and then, a cube is a square, so this was probably deformed. You could think of it that way. So two operations took place. The cube got squished, and then it got deformed. So to start the process, if I were to draw something like this toolbox, what I may do is actually carry out those two operations in my mind, the squishing and deforming. But by starting with this primitive shape, okay, as I'm sketching, so I may start with something like this. And immediately, what I have here, and we're going to draw through the back. It's a Scott Robertson technique, but just to show you the wireframe of the whole thing. We're going to draw through, and now I have what I would consider to be a form. So the next step, so that was the first step, form. The next step is then divide. And divide can mean adding to this, it can mean chamfering, fillets, those kinds of things, transitions, things that further communicate and define what this is. So I'm going to go ahead and chamfer these corners, like so, and like so. And this is a rough sketch. I'm going to use this as an underlay, like so. Okay, so I'm dividing this, right? So this section, as I draw on the surface, I'm almost cutting out this middle section, for example. And looks like we have some details on top here as well that I'm going to go ahead and cut in, like so. Okay, so those are my divisions. And then I can draw things like, I'm going to simplify this just a little bit for my sake so we can make it through in one video. But I'm just going to draw in a handle section here, like so. And again, these are all divisions. Actually, we're not going to overlay this. We'll just work with contrast and line weight to pull the details out of this particular sketch. So here's another division, which is the actual lid on my toolbox. And just to be clear, I do have reference in front of me. I'm looking at the toolbox, but I'm making some changes as I go along the way. So this double line that I've sketched in here, represents the part line on my toolbox. Okay. And looks like there's a little molded in detail on the top. Like so. And I'm going to use contour lines to kind of help me communicate form where necessary. All right, so there's my form, my division. We'll get back to beautify in just a, or the third step rather, which is beautify in just a sec. But for now, what I'd like to do is to kind of jump back to form and to start to pull out some depth. And I'm using a nice Sharpie here. And what's going to happen is, because of the contrast in my line weight, visually, my eyes are going to focus on kind of this outline here. And also, just by putting this outline, it kind of helps clean up the entire sketch. You know, I can kind of put a nice shadow in, for example, and in those areas on the inside where there's a little bit of overlap, I'm adding a line weight that's not as heavy as my outside line weight, but just to show, for example, on this little latch here, just to show that, you know, this edge overlaps that recessed or drop down area. Okay, so that's form, divide. And going back to form, I'm just going to add some contour lines. And this contour line is showing kind of what's happening on the form all the way across. Okay, so without even shading, I can communicate, you know, the surface changes in this toolbox pretty easily. Okay, here's a little spot for a label. Add some text. Okay, so I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. Elements like this here and this, things like text, adding text to your sketch, that's the beautify part of the process. So in my case here, this is a Thanos brand, so I'm gonna write that on the side here. That's part of beautify. It's about the details that then further communicate your idea, whether it be branding or notes, backgrounds. It could be things like texture differences. So let's say that in this little drop down area, I'm a little bit more heavily textured. I could add some stippling in these areas. Okay. And that's adding a little bit of texture to show that there is a difference. And these texture elements, for example, are part of the beautify process of sketching. And I found this rather to be particularly useful in my sketching, in my process, because it simplifies things. I know I don't say this out loud. Okay, time to make form, time to divide, time to beautify, but just having that system in place has relieved a lot of anxiety about sketching, because I know that I can start with a simple primitive shape, even something like a cube here, and I can divide this shape and just make these operations, you know, like, okay, that's, if we cut out the middle section there, if we cut down and we cut down again like so, and then back, oh look, we have some sort of chair, at least enough of a wireframe that you could then come back in and overlay if you wanted, and you could add different shapes, because that's giving you an opportunity to kind of focus on the perspective. And I can just come in and draw and relax. And with a few strokes, I now have a quick sketch of a chair. Let's add a little drop shadow. We'll talk about hatching and shadows another time, but for now, here's my quickly formed, divided, and beautified sketch of some sort of seating. Very simple, very quick, very easy. But again, if you just think in those terms, it can relieve a lot of stress as you sketch and draw your concepts and your designs. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully you've been able to learn from this video and that this technique will help you in your daily sketching. Remember, design is about communication, and be sure to listen, be sure to see, be sure to try and understand things as you see them. You can always find me on the internet. It's really easy to find me. You can just Google me or hit up at sketchaday.com on Instagram, or just visit sketchaday.com. And there'll be more of these videos posted right here on Core 77 as well. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.